welcome to Northwest Newsweek. I'm Mitchell Ringos. We took a break in September, and in this episode, we'll be catching up on the events over the past month. But we'll start with Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who was in Greenstone and Thunder Bay on Thursday. The Premier made a number of significant announcements during his tour, most of them going to First Nations organizations.
Every time I come into a First Nations community, you treat me like gold.
Ford stopped by the local KCAT Center to announce the province has approved the organization as a certified carpentry training facility. Ford praised KCATS and Matawa for their out-of-the-box thinking. He also singled out Webequie and Martin Falls for blazing a trail when it comes to prosperity. Martin Falls Chief Bruce Achny-Penescom spoke about his openness to mining development in the Ring of Fire, but also says the Premier must be ready to meet with all of the affected First Nations at a nation-to-nation level if progress is to be made in the Ring of Fire.
Never take anything for granted. It always has to be a very fair partnership. And again, I'm very, very grateful. We'll always stand shoulder to shoulder with you. We'll always have your backs.
Martin Falls is a large part of what's happening at the Ring of Fire. But we're not the only First Nation there that's affected.
In Greenstone, Ford announced $5.7 million for several initiatives, including $2 million for a First Nations forestry training center and another $2 million for a First Nation-owned truck stop and commercial plaza. Ford's visit came just over a week after a group of First Nation leaders called for an end to mining activity on their traditional territory. The Ford chiefs held a news conference at Queen's Park demanding a meeting with the Premier. The chiefs of Neskantaga, Ki, Grassy Narrows, and Wapakeka, 4 of the 5 First Nations that make up the Land Defense Alliance, are arguing they need to consent to any development in their territories, including the Ring of Fire. The group rejected a meeting with Indigenous Affairs Minister Greg Rickford, saying they only want to meet with the Premier, demanding the province deal with them at a nation-to-nation level. Grassy Narrows Chief Rudy Turtle says while they don't want the situation to escalate, they'll take additional measures if needed.
We're going to be blockading, and he'll have to meet us face to face. If it comes to that, that's not our preference. We prefer that we sit at the table, and hopefully he's smart enough to do that. But if he's going to just keep, to his word, bulldozing his way, then I can tell you he's going to meet resistance.
According to the Land Defense Alliance, there are 5,000 mining claims in their traditional territories that they haven't consented to. The Premier did not commit to a meeting with the group. Ignace residents recently had another chance to weigh in on a potential deep geological repository for nuclear waste. At the invitation of the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, the Township of Ignace hosted a Northwest Nuclear Exploration event. Carl Langdon was there.
Exhibitors from across Canada filled the Ignace Recreation Complex for the Northwest Nuclear Exploration event, offering educational opportunities to area residents. Ignace Interim Mayor Kim Bakery says her priority is to empower community members to decide for themselves.
My goal is to make sure that they learn what they need to learn to make an informative decision on this.
The Ignace community and the Wabigoon Lake Ojibwe Nation area are going to be making a very important decision in the next year as to whether they want to be informed and willing hosts for this project. This is an opportunity for them to get those questions answered and some specific questions for the area as well, because every area has its unique characteristics.
The town has hired an outside consultant to collect and gauge opinions from the public to help shape the township's decision.
Our relationship with the township is to really respect that resident voice. So the outside voices beyond that will not be captured in our report. And we will actually be reaching people 16 and over. So we're going to look at a youth vote as well, or a youth decision, and we will be collecting the narrative perspective of kids 11 to 15 as well.
Jason Donev, a physics professor from the University of Calgary, spoke at the event. He says there are a lot of misconceptions about nuclear waste, thanks to popular fiction.
This is what nuclear waste looks like, because it's a solid. It is not green glowing goo. But the stories that we tell about it being something that can ooze, something that can flow.
Ultimately, he believes it's up to residents to decide if the repository is best for their community.
That vote matters. And the willingness or lack of willingness from a community really is going to determine whether or not this project goes forward in a very real way.
Carl Langdon, TBT News.
The Transportation Safety Board is still gathering information about a recent plane crash west of Fort Frances. 3 people escaped serious injury in mid-September when a Cessna 172 struck a power line before hitting the ground, flipping onto its roof in a field near Stratton. According to a TSB spokesperson, the plane was registered to Manitoba-based Harv's Air and was on a rental flight to an unregistered landing site. The pilot apparently had to abort a landing and lost control, colliding with a power line and then overturning once it hit the ground. The plane sustained heavy damage, but because there were no major injuries, the TSB did not send investigators to the scene and is instead collecting details regarding the crash. September 30th was the 3rd annual National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in Canada. The event was observed across the region to recognize the impact of the residential school system and to remember the children that were lost. In Thunder Bay, an Orange Shirt Day gathering was held at Hillcrest Park. Mike Lang was there.
Hey, 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 hey.
It was a morning of truth through sharing.
215 kids missing, our missing relatives, our missing brothers, sisters.
And reconciliation through learning.
We weren't allowed to share our true history. We weren't allowed to practice our culture.
Around 100 gathered at Hillcrest Park as a new sitting area was opened to provide the community with a place to commemorate and honor the survivors of the residential school system and to acknowledge the thousands of children who never made it home.
It's very traumatic for our families still today. We're wounded today. We're trying to rebuild, trying to get well from that trauma.
But the trauma over those that were lost created resiliency among those who survived.
They didn't realize that the Anishinaabe people were actually seeds. So when those seeds were buried, and eventually we sprouted and became those wildflowers, and we became being very resilient.
The gathering was attended by local community leaders, councillors, and politicians, including Indigenous Services Minister and MP Patty Haidu.
This is, I think, the work of dismantling that heavy colonial system that basically tore away those rights and then established a pattern of control over First Nations lives.
The final and most important step of truth and reconciliation: action.
It is about supporting the leadership of Indigenous peoples to reclaim their own identities, their culture, their language, and their law.
It's very fresh yet. We still got a lot of work to do together, and we're willing to work with the dominant group together to come to terms to understanding what really happened.
The morning was capped off by a raising of the survivors' flag. It sails at half-mast as an expression of remembrance and honor for those impacted by residential schools in Canada. Mike Lang, TBT News.
Continuing with our coverage of Truth and Reconciliation Day, members of the Anishinaabe Aski Nation and residents marched in honor of the children who survived the residential school system, those who never made it home, and those who are still missing. A sea of orange shirts could be seen on the walk from the NAN office on Syndicate Avenue down Arthur Street in Thunder Bay. Over 100 people participated in the walk, which ended at Vickers Park for speeches, a barbecue, and activities. Attendees heard stories from residential school survivors, as well as words from Deputy Grand Chief Annabette Achni-Penescum and Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler. Fiddler says the day makes him think of his late sister, Sarah Jane.
She attended residential school when she was small, and she's one of those students that just never really came home, and I've only met her twice in my life, and died in BC. That's where she's buried. So I think about her and others that never made it home. Orange Shirt Day is important, but I think the work needs to continue all year round, including in our school boards, including all service organizations. That we do need to fight, the deniers out there.
For the first time in the history of Grand Council Treaty 3, the Grand Chief has been elected to serve a 4th term. Wichita Francis Kavanaugh was re-elected Monday on the 150th anniversary of the signing of Treaty 3. Kavanaugh was elected through a traditional selection process in accordance with Anishinaabe protocols. Besides being a record 4th term, it's also a record 3rd consecutive term for Kavanaugh. Grand Council Treaty 3 represents 26 First Nations in the western part of this region, along with 2 in Manitoba. In a written statement, Kavanaugh said he is humbled by the trust and support of the citizens of Treaty 3. Coming up after the break, Caribou Lake First Nation celebrates their connection to the Watay transmission line. North Caribou Lake First Nation is the latest remote community to celebrate the end of their dependence on diesel power for electricity. The community was connected to the provincial power grid last October and formally celebrated the milestone last month. Lee Noonan was there.
The North Caribou Lake substation now connects the First Nation to Ontario's power grid through the Wataynikaneyap power transmission line. It also serves as a connection point for communities further to the north. Following a blessing of the substation, the community celebrated the beginning of a new era of reliable energy.
I'm very excited and I was looking forward to this day. It has been a long time coming.
Chief Cornelius Benson says the old diesel generating station was unreliable, causing frequent outages, and didn't have the capacity to meet the community's existing needs, let alone support any new growth.
Now, since we have this main grid, we can upgrade more of our facilities and things that we use in our community.
And then last but not least, Ontario's Energy Minister Todd Smith was among the many dignitaries at the event. He calls progress on the Watay grid an extraordinary achievement.
1,800 kilometers of transmission line making its way through the tundra and the forests in northwestern Ontario, and that work being done 12 months a year in the middle of winter in very, very harsh conditions, and then a lot of the work being done during the pandemic as well. It is quite an accomplishment.
The celebration was particularly poignant for Wataynikaneyap CEO Margaret Kennequinash.
The need for reliable energy has been something that our community has been talking about for quite a long time. So I'm very happy to be home because this is my home community, and to celebrate with the community members. It's always good to build something, a foundation for our future generation, because without it, where is our little ones going to be? And we got to be visionaries in this, in anything that we do.
Kennequanash hopes to have as many as 5 communities electrified this fall. The next will be Wawa-Capiwin First Nation, which is celebrating their electrification on September 29th. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
The OPP's Professional Standards Unit is continuing an internal investigation into the actions of one of their officers in Kenora. It stems from a video posted online which shows the officer attempting to euthanize a deer using the butt end of an axe. And a warning to viewers, the footage is disturbing. The video shows an injured deer out front of a Kenora home on September 3rd. One of the officers is then seen swinging the axe at the deer's head, and the axe slips out of his hands. In a statement, the OPP says this is not the way officers are trained or expected to deal with this type of situation, as the Police Act follows for the use of police-issued firearms to dispatch suffering animals. The video was posted online by Animal Justice, which lobbies for the humane treatment of animals. A spokesperson for the group calls the officer's actions cruel and inexcusable. Ontario Solicitor General was in Thunder Bay last month to announce the purchase of 17 new fire trucks for unincorporated areas in Northern Ontario, as well as 2 new mobile live fire training units. Michael Kersner made the announcement at the FireCon event. Lee Noonan reports.
The province pegs the cost of 2 new mobile live fire training units, 17 new fire trucks, and other firefighter equipment at close to $35 million. Solicitor General Michael Kersner announced the purchase at FireCon in Thunder Bay.
The investment of these assets will provide our northern firefighters, many of whom are volunteers, with the equipment and training needed to save lives.
The 2 new mobile training units, similar to this one, will double the Ontario Fire College's complement of units from 2 to 4. Ontario Fire Marshal John Pegg says the existing units are fully booked and will travel to 47 locations, training nearly 4,000 more firefighters this year.
Having additional units available to support Northern Ontario communities gives us the opportunity to reach more fire departments and more firefighters, who in turn will be better trained and ready to meet the demands of the firefighter profession.
Thunder Bay Atikokan MPP Kevin Holland, a former firefighter himself, says live fire training provides a crucial hands-on experience for firefighters that can't be replicated. He says the mobile units are particularly important to rural northern fire departments.
For volunteers in particular, when they have to leave their community to go to training, so a 3-day training now turns into a 5 or a 6-day training, and they're losing time off work. They're losing time away from the family, and they're pulling the volunteers out of their communities for this training. So to be able to bring that training into the community is really vital.
The 17 new fire trucks and other equipment, which includes self-contained breathing apparatus and thermal imaging cameras, will be going to unincorporated townships covered by the Northern Fire Protection Program, which includes 48 communities, more than half of which are in the Northwest.
The benefits that these communities will receive with these 17 fire trucks, new fire trucks, to name a few, will improve resource deployment, maintenance costs, and distribution across the north, meaning saved lives in a timelier manner when every second counts. When absolutely every second counts.
A government spokesperson did not provide a timeline for delivery of the trucks and equipment and said they've yet to decide exactly where each truck will go, pending an assessment that will consider call volume and the age of existing equipment. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
The family of an elderly Fort Frances woman who died in 2015 is calling on the province to investigate the hospital where it happened. 76-year-old Hermina Fletcher died after a nurse falsified a morphine dosage in order to feed her own addiction. 38-year-old Lindsay Coyle is currently awaiting sentencing in the case after pleading guilty last year to criminal negligence causing death. It happened at the La Vérendrye Hospital in January of 2015. Fletcher's family is now calling on the Ford government to launch an investigation into the healthcare facility, as they believe other families may have been victimized by Coyle as well. The family's lawyer, Doug Judson, says Fletcher's death has shaken the community's confidence in the hospital, and he says Fort Frances residents need to know who else was at risk, how this occurred and for how long, and what measures are in place to prevent it from happening again. A transport driver from Edmonton has been charged after a single vehicle crash closed Highway 11 in the Beardmore area for over 6 hours. On September 24th at around 5:30 p.m., the truck went out of control and overturned just east of Rocky Bay First Nation, spilling its cargo of lumber and completely blocking both lanes. Beardmore paramedics and firefighters responded, along with officers from the Nipigon and Greenstone OPP detachments. The 31-year-old transport driver was later charged by OPP with careless driving. Well, after the break, we've got a story about a Red Rock man with autism who has now authored 2 children's books. Stay tuned. A major accomplishment for a Red Rock author who lives with autism. He's written, illustrated, and published a second children's book. Zachary Hendricken recently appeared at the Brody Library in Thunder Bay to sign copies of his latest work titled The Little Bird Learns to Fly. Joe Sadowski has the story.
A young man with autism, Zachary Hendricken, has found his passion in writing, and his growing success is allowing him to share his talents with the world. Although Hendricken has already published 2 children's books, there's no stopping this author until he reaches his goal of being able to buy a house on his own in his hometown of Red Rock.
It came naturally, so it's kind of something I like doing now as a new experience to achieving my goal and making my life happen very well. And I never give up on anything I put my mind to.
The little bird in Hendricken's stories is named Jason, and Zachary's mother says that his stories about Jason are his real-life experiences of how Zachary is finding his way through life.
And I think subconsciously, Jason, the little bird, is Zachary, and it's how he's trying to navigate his way through life and understanding. So how he understands it is how he tries to put it into the books.
Hendricken's close family friend and adopted aunt, Jacqueline Kennedy, says Zachary wants to be known as an inspiration for other kids with autism and to make it known that despite his special needs, anyone can achieve their goals when they set their minds to it.
He wants to be an inspiration to other autistic
children and parents of children so that they can realize that goals can be reached. He drives the 400 series in Toronto. He learned how to play the piano on his own. He is just somebody, he moved to Thunder Bay and he lives here by himself.
I try to help them with autism too. If anything is a problem, or if they just need help, like I do, and we all work together.
Hendricken already has a few more books that are in the works, and he has another book signing near the end of the month at the Indigo on Memorial Avenue. Joe Sadowski, TBT News.
What an awesome story. Well, an Ignace man is now a millionaire thanks to the latest 50-50 draw run by the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Foundation. Norman Barrett got the fateful call from CEO Glenn Craig on September 29th.
I have some news for you.
What?
You are a millionaire.
Holy moly. Oh, are you joking?
I'm not joking, Norman. I've been waiting to do this call all morning. We were so excited with the September draw, and you are now a millionaire.
Oh my God, this is gonna be, it's gonna shock my wife. Holy Jesus, this has gotta set in. I don't even know what to think right now.
You know that song, If I Had $1 Million? Have you ever thought, what would you do if you had $1 million?
I'd be debt free right now.
Well, Norman, you're debt free.
Barrett takes home $1,136,985. In addition to paying off his debts, he says the money will allow him and his wife to pay for some ongoing major home renovations. Tickets are on sale now for this month's draw. That winning ticket will be announced on Friday, October 27th. And that wraps up this edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you right back here next week.